In the news this week, waging war against racism, community leaders bestow anti-racism policy responsibility on new Liberal leader Libby Mettam, a WAMA News exclusive.
A greener future, plastic takeaway food containers to be banned in Western Australia. 2 men are wanted over the smash and grab jewellery robbery in Armidale, and later Dr Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loon and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. Community leaders want to see a clearer focus on Western Australia's ethnic community and an effective anti-racism policy on a national level from newly appointed Liberal leader Libby Mettam. Leading advocates were quick to comment on a further inquiry into executive policy making and Ms Mettam's helpful handling of Aishwarya's death in August last year. After the dramatic leadership change within the Liberal Party, new leader Libby Mettam wastes no time in curbing power brokers, focusing heavily on bread and butter issues affecting Western Australians. Overall, it's a good start, but community leaders want Ms Mettam to focus on ethnic issues and create an effective anti-racism policy idea for Western Australia, a policy that is also in sync on a national level.
There are a couple of things I would like her to do. One I've already mentioned, which is the multicultural policy framework. The other, I think, which is important, is the issue of racism. I think it's important that, we actually do much more in terms of effectively addressing racism at the national level. Finally, after decades of advocating and lobbying for it, we do have a national, framework in place. Whether its adequacy and effectiveness is another story, but at least there's a framework in place. We still do not have one at the state level.
Ramda Sankaran from Multicultural Services Centre WA hopes the new leader will hold the McGowan government accountable on promises made to specific communities and enhance harmony via new anti-racism policies.
Governments of the day prior to an election make certain commitments. Whoever ends up in opposition needs to ensure that they hold the winners to account for whatever it is that they promised the electorate before the election.
Multicultural advocate Suresh Rajan also praised Ms Mettam for being observant and respectful following Libby's previous dealings on the Aishwarya case. He is confident that she is in a strong position with the potential to be a good minister.
We could help minister, in time when they manage to get back into government and so on. But at the moment, I think that as Shadow Health, she's in a very, very strong position because she's got a good understanding of exactly where all of the issues are and where the hot buttons are in regard to what the system is dealing with. So I think that where she's, I hope she retains the Shadow Health portfolio now. And really, they haven't got a lot of choice of who to give it to.
And here are the other top stories making news in Perth and WA this weekend.
A 16-year-old girl has died after a shark attack on Swan River in Fremantle. Stella Berry, a Year 11 student from Shetton College, was jet skiing with friends on the river when the incident happened at around 3 p.m. on Saturday. She passed away at the scene following the suspected shark attack, according to police. Fisheries Minister Don Punch expressed condolences to the family.
We have a pretty comprehensive shark mitigation strategy that's based on identifying where sharks might be and putting in place appropriate measures to try and reduce risk. Most of the risk is occurs in the ocean. There's only been 6 recorded historical attacks in the river, and this would make it 7, and the first attack was recorded back in 1923. So historically speaking, there's not been a large number of attacks compared to the ocean, but we'll certainly be looking at the outcome of this investigation and seeing if we need to do more to try and reduce risk in the river environment.
Sewage is still pouring into the river in Fitzroy Crossing despite the government's promise of having the pipes fixed. It's been 30 days since the flood crisis, and the sewage pollution has a massive impact on local rivers. Liberal MLC Neil Thompson has started a parliamentary petition and urged the government to lift its game in regional infrastructure maintenance following the devastating floods.
The Minister was up there about 2 weeks ago and said that would be dealt with about now, or have it dealt with by now. We've still got raw sewage going into that river. I think the response there is poor. And I'm surprised that the government hasn't actually come up with an interim solution with providing an opportunity for sewage to be diverted into some sort of a pond or something to hold it at least until they can get that pipe across the river. But it's just not good enough, quite frankly.
Hi there. Are you looking for a new home or want to refinance your car mortgage to get a better rate? At AA Finance Solutions, we have the expertise and knowledge to help you to find the right loan for your needs and budgets. Contact us today. Let us help you to make your home ownership dream a reality.
AA Finance Solutions, your local mortgage broker.
The McGowan government has announced Phase 2 of the state's war on plastic waste, with even more single-use plastic items to be banned and eventually phased out following the end of the month. Plastic produce bags and takeaway food containers are on the hit list as Western Australia moves towards a greener future. Here's my conversation with Environment Minister Reece Whitby.
Can you please tell us a bit about how the ban on these particular items will impact people and businesses in WA?
Absolutely. Involves 9 single-use plastic items. So here's a couple of those examples. So you'll be familiar with this item. It's a plastic item. We use it for containers, takeaway Chinese food, etc. This is an example of an alternative. This is plastic. This is fibre-based. This is much more friendly to the environment when it breaks out down in landfill or in litter. This plastic persists for decades and decades in the environment. This breaks down much more quickly and is less harmful when it does. So that's just one example. We've got a range of examples here. We have coffee cups. So you have this coffee cup, for instance, looks like a normal coffee cup, but it contains a plastic liner. This one doesn't. So this is a compliant compostable coffee cup. So this is the transition. Most people will not realise the difference. When they go and buy a coffee, it'll feel the same, look the same, they won't notice.
Can you tell us if people should be concerned about rising costs in food with the transition?
Well, look, costs are always a concern, but the reality is most people in a cafe today in Perth, and for many, many months and maybe years, are already buying the compliant compostable cups. They're already paying for it because businesses have gone ahead and made the switch themselves. But the cost is marginal. It's about 3 to 4 cents for the lid and about 3 cents for the cup for a compliant cup compared to the old cups are non-compliant. Now, in the cost of a cup of coffee, $5, that represents about 1.4%. So as we heard today, the owner of Social Manor here in Vic Park says it's a cost that he's prepared to absorb. It's not a big cost compared to the other inputs to a cup of coffee, and most people would be more than happy to pay 1.4% more for their daily coffee if they know it's going to help the environment.
Is the timing something that businesses should be concerned about?
Yeah. Well, the timing is important because what we're saying today, we've made the announcement, we're going to transition, but we've left a transition period for each product. So some products will have a longer transition or a shorter, so it might be 6 months right up to 28 months. But the important thing is you give time for businesses to adapt. So if they happen to have stockpiles of the old stock, let them trade it out. If you want to let them put in new orders with the suppliers and receive that, let that happen. So it's all about working with business and being reasonable and having common sense rather than being hard compliance in terms of fines. So, so far we haven't had to fine anyone with our stage 1. So we believe that if you give people time to adapt and move that way, they'll make the change.
The missing radioactive capsule that sent Western Australia into a panic for most of this week has at last been found, according to the Minister for Emergency Services, Stephen Dawson. Mr. Dawson said the capsule had been discovered at around 11 in the morning south of Newman. A team from the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation and the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, supported by the Department of Health, carried out the recovery mission.
As I've discussed, we need to make sure that we learn the lessons from the circumstances and what led to the loss of the capsule to put in place the additional controls that we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
WA Police's Rapid High Harm Offender Response Team are investigating a jewellery store robbery in Armidale. The incident happened at around 4:25 a.m. on Tuesday at a shopping mall on Jewell Street in Armidale. 2 men forcefully entered a jewellery store and smashed multiple bench cabinets. A large number of rings and necklaces were stolen before both suspects fled the shopping centre. Authorities have released pictures of both men wanted to assist detectives with the investigation. Anyone with information relating to this incident or who can identify the men pictured is asked to contact Crime Stoppers.
Nick Goiran has stepped aside as the WA Liberal Party Secretary following Libby Metham's rise to leadership. Mr. Goiran may lose his Shadow Attorney General and Child Protection portfolios in the upcoming party reshuffle. According to Ms. Metham, Mr. Goiran has been elected by the people of the South Metropolitan Region and will continue to serve in Parliament in that role. Moving forward, Ms. Metham says she has a clear list of expectations she wants to present as the new leader of the Liberal Party.
We had a discussion. I'm not going to go into what was a private conversation, but I'm pleased that Nick made that decision to step aside, and I'm pleased to have Steve Martin as the new Parliamentary Secretary for the Liberal Party.
St John of God Hospital has decided to cancel paediatric surgeries due to a lack of nurses. The overstretch of nurses and midwives in the public and private sectors is highlighted again by the Australian Nursing Federation WA Secretary Janet Rea. The union leader also took the opportunity to continue health workers' fight for a 5% pay rise, arguing current wage levels are not enough to retain health workers and attract new nurses to the system.
The administrative payment is actually a really big win for the nurses, midwives and the police. It shows that the government was willing to give us a bit of financial relief. They've already approved the ratios. That's one of the things we'll be discussing today, is the ratios and the implementation of them. As I said, I'm very hopeful today that our proposal will be met and taken seriously and considered by the government seriously, and then we can take it to the members.
And now here's AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly medical and news commentary.
Thanks for your time. As someone who's previously lived and worked in the United States of America, I'm a fan of the idea of having mental health screening checks done by doctors for people who want to have firearms licences. Sadly, often this would be for the protection of the person themselves as much as it is for members of their family or any member of the public. We don't have very many gun-related deaths in Western Australia. I think it was about 20 in the last 12 months, and about half of those apparently linked to mental health issues. And very important that we don't go down a path where gun ownership becomes the default in a community, because once that is out of the bag, then it's not just a matter of infringing on people's sporting rights. It then becomes impossible to control what is a all too ready source of carrying through with violence in the community, as we see in the United States, unfortunately, with the mass shootings over there. So these changes by the state government would be applauded. They make sense, and from a mental health and a physical health perspective, we would support that, whilst acknowledging people's rights to still engage in sport and in recreation with weapons in a way that is safe for them and for the rest of the community. Meanwhile, of course, we had over 18,000 deaths attributed to COVID in the last 12 months, a much bigger issue, and yet our government's completely ignoring it now and pretending as if it's not still happening, even though we still have well over 1,000 people around the country still in hospital, and we're still seeing more deaths in the first part of this year than we did in the whole of 2021, and certainly a lot more so far this year than we saw in the same period last year. We reached the national road toll equivalent for the year from COVID within 8 weeks at the start of this year. So we do need to keep all of this in perspective and try to protect particularly the elderly in our community. Having said that, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Important to also carry on with other public health work, like making sure that gun ownership is safe. Thanks for your time.
That was Dr. Andrew Miller's comment. And on another note, it will be unjust for me not to mention this before we cross over to Melly, and that's Melly's birthday. Happy birthday, Melly.
Thanks, Ivan. I appreciate that.
You got the wish list ready?
I do have some wishes, and fingers crossed they'll come true.
Yeah, we can't talk about that, otherwise it wouldn't come true. But is the paper full?
It is very full. I've got a lot of wishes for this year.
All right. I wish they all come true.
Thanks, Ivan.
For the better. And on behalf of the viewers, we wish you all the best as well. Recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
Right now, here is Madeline Lombardi with Western Perspective.
Thanks, Ivan and Melly. Welcome to Western Perspective. My name's Madeline Lombardi. WAMN News spoke with political journalist Peter Kennedy about Libby Medham's plans as the new Liberal leader of Western Australia. Mr Kennedy says she spoke well at a recent press conference and scored her a 7 out of 10 for her delivery, performance and aspirations moving forward.
Look, it was very important that Nick Goran stepped down as the Parliamentary Secretary of the Liberal Party. Libby Medham had insisted that that be the case. He hesitated earlier in the week, but she persisted, and it was very important that she win the day, because if she hadn't won the day, then her seeking and gaining the leadership would have been absolutely worthless.
The press conference was a bit fiery. There were a lot of journalists asking questions. What do you have to comment on Libby Medham's performance when asking those questions and not kind of delivering the responses that were asked?
Well, she came across very firmly, I think, but also the point she made, while she was being criticised or questioned about the Parliamentary Liberal Party, she threw it back on the government and questioned the performance of several ministers, and also questioned the issues that uppermost in West Australians' minds. You know, things like law and order and the hospital situation, cost of living, cost of power, those sorts of things. So in that sense, she, as far as the Liberal Party was concerned, she got what she wanted from within the party room. That was for Nick Goran to step down as the Secretary of the party. And then, as well as that, Steve Martin is the new Secretary of the party. She's obviously very happy to have Steve Martin MLC as the new Secretary. But look, the important thing for her is that it's the perception. The perception was that the Liberal Party was being run by this group called the Clan. There were the power brokers, there was Peter Collier, Nick Goran, and before that Matthias Cormann. It was very important for her to take it on and emerge the winner. She got an apology from Peter Collier. Nick Goran has stepped down as a Parliamentary Secretary after hesitating on Tuesday, but she persisted and got what she wanted. So I think from her and the perception of her as a leader, that's a good start for her. As she seemed to be, she came across strong, and she came across clear in what she wanted. And the Liberal Party desperately needs something like that.
As you were saying as well, I did notice that in her speech she was commenting on poor hospital, services that the McGowan government is offering, stuff to do with social housing as well, and wanting to fix that within the Liberal Party. What was your comment on that and her kind of take on, delivering that?
Well, as far as the Liberal Party is concerned, she's got to lead it and reorganise it, and get the Liberal Party as a united force behind her to rebuild it. I mean, the Liberal Party stocks in Western Australia have never been lower than they are now. The last election result was a disaster. The federal election result was appalling. And the party has done virtually nothing about sort of lifting its game. So this is the first sign of a reorganisation under new leadership, and to give it fresh energy, a fresh image, and to take it up to the government. And a couple of times in that news conference, she did take it up to the government, pointing out those areas where the government is wanting. And I would expect she will be doing more of that, and the Liberal Party team will be doing more of that over the coming months.
Do you project that she'll do a better job than David Honey in terms of lifting up the Liberal Party?
Well, look, it's a team issue, and I would expect that the Liberal Party would work more strongly as a team. In the last 2 years in opposition, she has been an effective spokesperson on behalf of the Liberal Party, but she's had help, I know that, and she chaired that sexual assault inquiry into the mining sector, which gave her a high profile. And so all those have helped in the projection of her as the future leader of the Liberal Party. But the challenge for her is to keep it going. That's the big challenge for her and the Liberal Party.
How many points would you give Libby Medham on the press conference?
I'd give her 7 out of 10. I think she number one, she emerged a winner from the party room meeting. Number two, she looked at weaknesses in the government and also ministers that she considered to be weak, and turned things back on the government. So as far as that's concerned, I'd rate her 7 out of 10.
And you can read Peter Kennedy's analysis and other premium stories of the week by subscribing to WAMN Extra News Club, supporting independent journalism and keeping democracy strong. And now here's Leo Puglisi with what's coming up on 6 News Tonight.
Thanks, guys. On 6 News, the US shoots down a Chinese spy balloon over the Atlantic Ocean. Anthony Albanese says critics of the Voice to Parliament are trying to start a culture war. And One Nation, one of almost a dozen parties said to be deregistered in WA within days. Watch live right now on our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News AU to find us, or on our website, 6newsau.com. For now, though, guys, it is back to you.
Thanks, Leo. Before we go, a brief weather update. It's been very hot this weekend as the temperature in Perth reached almost 40 degrees on Saturday. The good news is the mercury will fall and as a result will reach 33 degrees on Monday, 32 on Tuesday, 29 on Wednesday, 31 on Thursday and 29 again on Friday. Overnight temperatures will hover between 17 to 20 degrees, and that's all from Western Perspective this weekend. I'll be back with you next Sunday. Until then, Ivan and Melly, it's back to you.
Thanks, Maddie. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.